Well, listeners, as promised, we are back for a second World Cup Inside the Circle special with George Pinner and Dan Fox. So last week we covered all sorts of topics, from George being called a bad man to George injuring a Malaysian player to various different things going on there. But we didn't actually get round to talking about playing at a World Cup itself and specific games and things like that. So I guess a very vague question for you both. First of all, what are your sort of favourite World Cup memories of games that you've played in?
George, do you think that Belgian game was the best World Cup game you played in?
I think so. Obviously, the recent World Cup, the Argentina game, was fairly special. But Belgium, definitely for me, I think was probably the best game, I think, in terms of international hockey I've been a part of. Like, whenever someone asks me best memory, it's always that. And obviously the setting that it happened, I think, makes that. Same for you? Or
yeah, well, do you want to set the scene?
Well, okay, so 2014 World Cup, we've obviously had, as we talked about before, the build-up. It's been an interesting tournament in terms of, we all hope we could medal, but some very good teams there. Australia were phenomenal at the time. Holland, home soil. Germany, this. And we had a group of Spain, India, Malaysia, Australia and Belgium, I think, from memory. And, first game we play Spain, 1-1 draw. Bit of a dodgy draw, I have to admit, goal from my side. So ball gets smashed in. Everyone leaves it. There's no one near it, really, to be honest, apart from a guy, Tabal, who runs vaguely near it. And I leave the ball, and the umpire gives us 16, and Tabal gives the referral sign, and I'm like, oh God, has he touched it? And we knew it was going to be a tough group of Australia and Belgium. We need to do well. Goes to video, he's got the faintest of touches, and I've literally let in the most nightmare goal you could to start a World Cup campaign. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's so funny listening to a goalkeeper talk about games, because I reckon if you asked anybody else who was at that World Cup if they remember that instant, they'd say no. It was a funny game because basically Spain and us were pretty neck and neck in terms of overall ability, and it was a pretty tight game. We played reasonably well, probably scored a good goal, and it just meant that because of that draw, we didn't really have much margin for error. We probably have to beat everyone else, and because given Australia won every game in our group, it meant we couldn't lose any more games. So what was it? Malaysia, India, Belgium, and the other three sides in our group. Yeah. All three tough games, and we had to win them all. And at that point, we still didn't have Ian Lewis. Ashley was injured, but could still play. So we got to the point by the last game against Belgium where we'd been beaten well by Australia, who were, as you say, outstanding in the tournament. We'd narrowly beaten India and Malaysia, and in fact, the last 5 minutes of that India game might be one of my favourites. But we had to beat Belgium, so a draw wouldn't be good enough. So that was the setup.
That India game though was special because, as Dan said, we had the Spain game and we kind of knew, right, we've got to win every other pool game. And again, we play India, big deflection for the goal. It's 1-1, and we can't find. I think Glegg scored a corner just before half time, and it's 1-1, and we just can't find a way through them. And we get this corner. Ash hasn't flicked all tournament, and he steps up, and we did this move and Ash is brilliant on delivery, where he'd flick it. And was it you that dived head first?
Oh yeah. Strains the keeper from it. Unbelievable.
And the goalie dives and it hits him in the middle of the head, and you think, our luck is out. And it falls to Sai, who hits it upright with the edge of his reverse stick. How he did it, like a train into the net. Everyone goes mental because it's phew, we're looking like we're still in this. And Sai did a celebration like no celebration I've ever seen. He throw his stick and goes off to the big crowds in Holland. Everyone engulfs him and stuff like this. And I didn't find this out till later in the hotel. But the celebration got better, didn't it, Dan? Or at least from a taking perspective.
Well, so we all run back onto the pitch for the 40 seconds ready to start again, but Si can't find his stick anywhere. So he's in his excitement, he's like throwing it. But this football stadium had like a 10-foot trench all around the outside. So he has a thrown it down there, has one of the ball boys on it. He's like desperately running back. Bearing in mind, this was a tournament in which we played 5 minutes of a game with only 10 players because Si had accidentally subbed himself off at the wrong time. I mean, people were on edge. Anyway, he found his stick. We had 40 seconds left to play. We won the game. It was fun.
And that's also the game referred to in the last podcast. You've got Ian Lewis on the bench, injured, and like Si scores, and he's just. It's brilliant footage, and it'll exist somewhere, of him like banging his head, telling everyone to concentrate. After he's just picked up the physio on the bench, spun around about 4 times, nearly crushed the life of her, and then gives us like this one. And that was the game as well when you avoided quite a serious injury as well, Dan. Running one at corners.
So this is the time when George talks about me being soft at short corners. So this is a man who wears over £1,000 worth of protective equipment and stands 15 metres away from someone flicking it. And my job is to run straight at him as fast as I can.
Well, you based a career on basically running straight at that guy at the top of the circle. So, you've got to...
That got me 170 caps, mate. So I'd been a number one runner for about 2 years, and at a World Cup, it's kind of do or die, right? It doesn't matter if you get a few knocks. In a club game on a Sunday in November, you might think, I might get out of the way of this one. But no, so I ran down the line, and who would it have been? Rupinder flicking for India?
Yeah.
Absolute rocket. This was the first tournament you've been allowed knee pads. So I felt kind of doubly bulletproof, not just the bravery, but I've also got knee pads. And he hits me on the knee, and I thought my leg had come off. I mean, I was down, and there was no moving me. It's that just like quite like, oh. Anyway, George, absolutely no sympathy at all. Physio runs on, and yes, I was stretchered off.
He wasn't just stretchered off. Like, bear in mind, we've not got Ian Lewis, so our first choice spare fullback is not playing. Our next one's just been stretchered off. So the lack of sympathy was more from the kind of raffle I was conducting to try and work out who could play that position like for the remainder of the tournament. And luckily, we get it solved. We hold up. And then 5 minutes later, Dan, who we all thought had just had his career ended, is just doing a couple of stride outs by the bench. And honestly, the noise he made, everyone thought career over. But he was back on in 5 minutes. So that's why for the rest of his career, I never took him going down too seriously, because if you have to get stretchered off, they're close to putting the oxygen there, and then you can come on 5 minutes later. It was a bit difficult. But
yeah, I think that is really a mark of the man, that 5 minutes after a career-ending injury, I decided to come back on and play for my country. So, read into that what you will, George.
But no, going back to like where we were, we then obviously had a couple of Malaysia we won. Australia was a fairly dark day. It was boiling hot. Poor Nick Catlin sat law exams the morning before that exam. They scored within the first couple of minutes. They then scored one of these goals that forever gets shown. Rick Charlesworth, the ex-Australia coach, I thought it had just about gone away. They aerialed a ball just before half-time. Into our circle, Govers gets a touch, scores, and it goes down as a wonder goal. And it was bad enough it being shown, because it's you letting a goal the whole time. But Rick Charlesworth wrote in his book that it was one of his favourite memories of hockey because the goalkeeper fell asleep and hadn't organised the defence properly. So just as I thought it had gone, and the funniest thing was I really rollicked Henry Weir for not marking, and I think Henry might have even apologised at the time, but a few years later when John Bleeby shows him this quote, Henry's like, I knew it was your fault, I knew you shouldn't have switched off. But anyway, we get spanked 5-0 or 5-1. Interviews afterwards are all like, yeah, you guys, you play in Belgium next, you have to win, it's not going to happen. Well, insinuating if you lose 5-0 to Australia, you ain't going to be beating Belgium and stuff like that, and therefore tournament over and stuff like that. And yeah, we end up going and playing Belgium and winning 3-2. You probably remember the game a bit better than I do. I only really remember a couple of things.
Yeah, I mean, it was the most stressful 70 minutes of hockey I've ever played because it was so tight. And I think we went 1-0, but they pegged it back each time. So 1-0, 1-0.
1-0 down. Definitely 1-0 down. I remember
yeah, okay, so 1-0 down, 1-1. Then we go 2-1 up, but they peg it back to 2-2. And there's not long left, is there, where we flip the corner, it's given for hitting their guy on the line, and they've got no referral left. He claims it's hit his glove. We're pretty confident it's hit his body, but given there's no referral, it doesn't matter. So up steps Ian Lewis, who hasn't played the first 3 games of the tournament. And for a long time, Ashley used to take flicks, but we worked out that Ian can flick it in open play 75 yards. So if you do that from the penalty spot, it basically breaks the back of the goal. So he takes this flick, roofs it top left. There's about 6 minutes on the clock. He runs back to the halfway line doing the old, Kevin Keegan famous Ian Lewis goal celebration. And they're followed 6 minutes of us trying to get the ball into the corner and kind of crab it as far as we could, keep hold of it whilst they tried to score. And I think with about 6 seconds left, they fired this ball into the circle at head height. It went over everyone's shoulders. We did the big celebration. It's like a great one of you and Dixie hugging George, and then Barry and Bobby. But I think because we were a really new squad together, and how the tournament had gone, drawing the first game, losing to Australia, for us to make the semi-finals was not unexpected from within the group. But amongst the media and the tournament officials and the other teams, we've been written off a couple of times. Yeah, it's just absolutely brilliant.
And I met exactly like you say there. Like there's a real togetherness in the squad, and everyone thought that Belgium team would beat us. And I remember those last minutes because, especially as that ball came head height, I realised no one could get it, and I did a knee slap, as you alluded to earlier. Will, a few over the top celebrations in my career. Bob showed this in the video meeting because I knee slide, and it looks on the video like the guy at the far post has nearly scored an overhead smash as I'm knee sliding with 3 seconds left. But it was all in hand. But I remember that Ross Bain, top of the D, the interviews afterwards, people were so pumped, and it was a brilliant, brilliant feeling. And you suddenly went from, I don't remember much media attention before it, in the hotel, and suddenly the next day, everyone's asking what have we been doing? You got media requests. Sky, who were following the hockey at the time, wanted to speak to us all. People were flying people over to cover it and stuff like that. And it literally went from, a bit of hockey interest to suddenly Sky Sports News interest. And that was just an awesome, awesome day.
You're listening to Inside the Circle. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's actually listed on the FIH's YouTube channel as one of the all-time classics, that game. So I was re-watching it earlier to remind myself, and I wanted to talk to you about the Ian Lewis goal, the eventual winner, because I'm not sure how well you remember the corner before, but it's one of the weirdest things I've ever watched, because the corner's taken and the guy blocks it on the line. You've then got Barry Middleton and smashed the ball into the goal after the whistle. Yeah. So you've got him holding his head in despair. You've got Ashley on the floor holding his shoulder. You've got various people arguing with the umpires. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever watched.
The weirdest bit was I remember not watching it because, do not get me wrong, Ian and Ashley, 2 of the best penalty stroke takers out there. However, I can't remember why, from about 2 months out before training started, I just practiced penalty strokes with Lewis, and this is me taking penalty strokes, not trying to save them. And he was teaching me how you hold it lower down your stick. And I remember in the prep camp at HGC doing a few with Lewis, and they either broke the net or they troubled the clubhouse. And when he stood over that ball, I was just this is either going to be the best moment ever because he's going to absolutely roof this, or heaven forbid he's going to miss the crossbar and it's going to be that Chris Waddle moment. And as a really good mate, and obviously I was wanting to do well as a team, I just remember that being literally the most heart in mouth moment of any game I've played in.
It's the Barry finish is one of those moments that basically nobody realizes until you watch the video back. And most of our debriefing after games and around tournaments is watching footage. And after this game, Barry was I scored a brilliant goal. It's disallowed. Blah blah blah. Barry, no one cares. Barry, come on. And then he showed it back, and yeah, basically this bloke saves on the line, and Barry from the baseline smashes this ball into the back of the net. Yeah, and the scene is Ashley can barely move because his shoulder's out of place. This Belgian bloke on the line, he's been hit maybe in the chest, maybe in the gloves, complaining to the ref. It's absolutely, incredible.
What was going through your head then when you've seen that the ball has hit the guy on the line and you're confident that it is a stroke, but the Belgians are arguing and the umpires are getting together? What is going through your head at that time?
It's more and more with quarters, games tend to be tight, and with referrals, there are those moments where everyone's sort of holding their breath. And certainly that was one where, for the first time in a game which had been totally frantic, you've got a moment where you go, hang on, this is like basically our world depends on this, right? You know, we've been working towards it for 2 years since the last Olympics. This group of players, it's the biggest thing we'll ever do together. And basically it's going to get decided by what one bloke decides from what he's seen, and then on top of that, from what Ian does. As soon as that ball went in, we scored, and you can go back to marking your opposite number, moving your feet in the tackle, whatever it might be. It's much easier. There's a great bit of video footage actually with about 2 minutes to go. Barry and Nick Catlin are holding the ball up in the corner, and I'm involved in play. Now, Barry and Nick Catlin, very skillful. Me, I've got other strengths, and they both keep hold this ball, and they just, just nip it back to Dan. They pass it to me. My first touch, just straight onto the left foot, kick off the sideline. We've gone from like ball in complete control, opposite end of the pitch, to they've got a free hit on the sideline. Everyone get back behind the ball.
Yeah, it's interesting those moments because, like you say, like heart and mouth. That's the first game I remember, like being really confident we'd win. That morning I felt I still remember it at the buffet, like pre-game meal, being really confident but nervy. And I think as a player, I don't know if you'd have said that, but I always got nerves, and if I got those nerves, I knew it was a big game. I knew it mattered, and I tended to feel like I'd be up for it and stuff like that. Felt in a really confident place, and I remember it was the first time ever in my career I'd heard Barry and Ash out loud say, "I'm nervous." And in some ways, you'd think like two best players, like world best players, that would worry you. But I think it normalised it for everyone, and it made everyone know they care. And there was just this fantastic vibe across the whole squad. The only gutting thing about it was Tim got injured, making a fantastic block, and missed the rest of that game, and had a bit of an impact on his career, really, I think. But everything else about that day, including when Ian got that penalty, I jest about being worried. You just kind of felt it would happen. But yeah, there was definitely nervy moments, like when two umpires get together. How many times have you seen that happen and it gets overturned in club games, stuff like that? But there's that brief moment of don't you dare. But yeah, it all worked out all right.
We had a few years back then as well where we couldn't lose to Belgium. So they were obviously on the up. They came fifth in 2012. And then we all know what happened 2016, 2018. Pretty much the same group of players. But 2013 World League Finals, we beat them that game 1-0. We'd had a couple of tournaments where we come down from kind of 3-1 in the last minute, score 2 goals to equalise. Basically, we just had this run where they couldn't get the right result against us. So I agree, George. Back then, I just thought things were going our way for a reason. We battled our way through the start of the tournament, and then it came to this Belgian game. It was really simple. You've got to win to go through, and even though it was tight and competitive all the way through, I just always thought we'd have enough to beat them, and we did.
Was that also the game, thinking back, of Shirtsgate, or was that?
Yes, I think that was something I was going to bring up, because that's something we spoke about previously. Did the nerves get to Ash in the preparation?
Well, like I said, I'm in with him, and I've never noticed him getting nervous, stuff like that. We do chat. Him and Barry mentioned at the buffet that game that they were both feeling the nerves, but I don't remember anything differently. And actually, I wasn't aware of this story till a period of time after. But obviously, Dan was fairly heavily involved, as he'll explain.
Well, I mean, people in glass houses should not throw stones. I went to the World Cup semi-final in 2010 without my shin pads, so I've got form. But we turned up to so it was. I think it was the semi-final game against Holland.
Was it? I thought it was that game, but yeah.
Well, anyway, so massive game, obviously. There's a bit of pre-match nerves. For Ashley and Barry, having played so long in Holland, this was like a huge thing for them to play well and to show what they could do in front of a Dutch crowd. And we get to the ground, which is a good 20 minutes from the hotel. We don't mess around at the ground, so we only arrive probably an hour before the start of play. And Ashley just goes to our manager, Andy, just said, Andy, what would happen if somebody forgot their match shirt? It's like, and he's like, it's okay, you've got two, so that's not a problem. Ashley's like, no, if they forgot both of their match shirts, would that be a problem? And he's like, face just goes completely white, doing the maths, 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back, if we can get so anyway, huge panic. Ashley like sort of, can we stitch a number on the back of another shirt? It's like, Ashley, this isn't like a South League game, you know, you've got to have your match shirt. Anyway, he got it, we played, all was well.
But the best thing about it, as I understand it, was that obviously everyone has their own thing they do. It's a bit more regimented now, but Ash always used to be one of the main guys who will always match shirt to the pitch, full warm-up, never change. Some guys like to change their shirt. And he's in the changing room in this wrong coloured shirt, obviously, for the period of time before. And Dave Condon's picked up on it instantly, but thinking, Ashley, one of the best players, he's definitely got his house in order. So he chooses not to actually say anything, and not to Ash, but to Foxy, as they're walking out to warm up, of, Ash doesn't know he's got the wrong colour shirt on, doesn't he? So we've also lost a huge period of time where it could have been resolved. Luckily, we had different doctors for different tournaments, and the doctor we were, assigned or came with us to that trip had a convertible Porsche from memory, or at least a very decent convertible car. So he was like, don't worry, lads. And he was straight in the sports car, drove that back to hand deliver the match shirt. So, yeah, maybe that was nerves. But, even the best players have kit issues, shall we say. So it's not just every club player. It even happens at international level.
Is that perhaps more common than we'd think then? Because Dan, you mentioned about your shin pads, and we've got Ash's shirt. And I remember in a Pro League game last year, one of the Argentinian men took to the pitch in a training shirt with his number stick taped on the back. Does that happen a lot?
Harry Martin has attended a lineup with somebody else's match shirt on. So he has had a different name and number on the back. One game at Lee Valley when we had Help for Heroes, I think this might have been Ash as well, but I'm not totally sure on that one. No one noticed for the whole game that Ash had worn a shirt without Help for Heroes on it. He just picked up an older one and worn it. And Ash was then terrified that there was going to be some story about how he'd chosen not to have the sponsor on his shirt, which couldn't have been further from the truth. So he played, in the wrong playing shirt. Harry Martin played in the wrong playing shirt, although he has got form around the kit issue. But, yeah, it definitely happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, those two would be high up on your list of unprepared or like struggle to get the right kit to the right place at the right time. But there are a few people who are so well organised, like Gleggy, for example. George, what is Gleggy's pre-match sort of routine? The
bit we can talk about is the, regimented, one side of the room has to be his, has to sit on the set side of the bus. Kit is folded perfectly in his bag about a night before, has to sit in the right place in the changing room, in the dugout. But he is so superstitious. There's no way that man's kind of forgetting anything.
That is the strangest thing, looking back. I could never work out if the half an hour after you arrived at the ground but before you started the warm-up was either the best time of your life or the worst, because pretty much you are at your most nervous, because as soon as the warm-up starts, you're underway, you get going. You're at your most nervous, but also like you're never going to feel that alive again. I mean, it's something you trained your entire life towards, and you're about to go and do it. And it's just, you're completely prepared with your best mates. You're all pulling in the same direction. Like you couldn't be better prepared. It's such a strange thing and hard to replicate outside of hockey. I'd say that's probably something I've missed.
Yeah, and I think when you say, like, do people forget shirts and stuff like that? Yes, of course. And even ask any physio, they carry a gum guard in their bag, the ball in the bag job from like Sports Direct. Everyone's got the proper O-Pro gum guards, but someone will forget their gum guard at some point in time. So they always carry stuff like that. But like Dan said, it might be international hockey, but it's still the same. Like, I remember that World Cup, there was one song like this, we called it jazz flute, but we played it before every single game, and we had the same set playlist. The jokes in the changing room were the same kind of jokes you get in a club environment. And I think people don't realise that it might be international hockey, but it's still effectively 18 guys who've been through exactly the same experiences club-wise as other people kind of have. And the changing room dynamic is no different to like the 6-11 on a Saturday through to international. There's still that fun Mickey taking, songs in the changing room, people getting their kit, all of that stuff still happens.
Subscribe to Inside the Circle now from all of your usual podcast providers. What was it like in the changing room then, going back to that Belgian game after you beaten them? What were the celebrations and the feelings like?
It's after in a big tournament, you've obviously always got to prepare for the next game. So there's things like your ice baths, people who've got to see the physio, there's probably someone off for a drugs test, all those bits and pieces. But also it's just like that total satisfaction of having given 100%. I remember specifically that game, sitting in these big sort of low paddling pools, and basically everyone is absolutely shattered, but also just completely like in this delirious state, just completely happy. There's not much of the usual like sing-along, sing-song sort of stuff. It's just some music on the background and everyone just having a drink, like, well, I say a drink, like a protein shake, and just relaxing in the ice baths. And I mean, that and a couple of other similar moments after big games would definitely be some of my fondest memories.
We always had the same songs we sung as well, especially that around that tournament, that cycle. I think it came from Dan's old club, Hampstead, but Home and Away always got sung in the ice baths. Once we made the big mistake in Australia of singing it in the ice bath. Australia were on next, playing an international, as their national anthem was playing. All you could hear was us singing Home and Away from the ice bath. So that was a little bit awkward. But luckily, this was like last game of the day. So singing all like Home and Away, just really cheesy songs as a team. But like, it's again, going back to club, it's so like club. So on Saturday, teams will win, they'll have a brilliant victory. And again, ushered off the pitch, ready for the next game to go on. And I remember that, like you go in the changing rooms and you want to quickly go out and see your parents. Like we were both really lucky, but like families came all around the world supporting us. You want to go and give them a big hug, and you walk out and like the stewards are trying to like usher them out of the stadium because like the stadium's only booked till like 10 o'clock at night, you know, that type of thing out you get. And so although it's different, you still have that same kind of thing of being rushed off. But remember going and seeing parents and giving them a big hug as well, and yeah, getting back into that changing room and just, as Dan said, enjoying the moment whilst being knackered. But that tournament was also good fun though, because it was quite a lot longer, and I think it was the World Cup from memory. I can't remember if it was this one or it was maybe it might have been a qualifying tournament later on. But there's a really, really good rib place in The Hague that Ashley and Barry and all the HGC players went to, and we went to it pre-tournament as a little tween trip. And I'm pretty sure it was this tournament where it was kind of said, if you do well, we've got 3 or 4 days off. We can go for ribs the next kind of lunchtime. There's like a little bit of a treat and team bonding. So even when you've got a team of kind of adults in their 30s, bribery was still being used by the coach to get the best out of players, you know, when it came to stuff like that. So yeah, it was a fun period afterwards.
Yeah, it's also such a release, isn't it? Because pre-match there's so much tension around what's about to happen, and throughout the day you'll have briefings either as in your lines, so defenders, the team tactics, watching some video. I mean, often we play at 7-8 o'clock at night, so that is a long day to try and eat properly, rest up, but also not get too kind of sleepy. I mean, George, describe what is a day like if you've got a 7 p.m. hockey match?
Well, as Dan said, like is it the best day of your life or the worst? Because I was trying to work out the number of hours I reckon I've sat around trying to just pass, or like, so as I see it, wasted. As a hockey player, waking up at 10 in the morning, I don't sleep during the day, I can't nap. So from like 10 till, let's say, prep starts around 5:30, you're basically trying to just kill 7.5 hours. Like, and I'm someone that's at dear other people's sleep. So I'm trying not to annoy everyone who's sleeping. And it's just very strange that I'll watch corners for the last few times. We'll have game briefs and like meals. As Dan said, like, you're just desperate for that to come, and everyone kills time in their own kind of unique and special way. And then after the game happens, you've all had like coffee, caffeine, and stuff like that. And sleeping can be a nightmare, can't it? After like the late games.
Yeah, you get semi-nocturnal if you're playing 7, 8, 9 p.m. in the evening. So actually wake up at 9:30, just move everything back a bit, because you know if you come off the pitch at 9:30, it's going to be another, good 5 or 6 hours before you actually can properly unwind and go to sleep.
What about when you're in a country like India that's a different time zone? Do you acclimatise to be exactly matching that time zone, or is there sort of, because if you're often playing late at night, it's sort of a mix and match or halfway between, or do you just try and acclimatise to it as the time zone is?
That has come on so much. So when I started in 2008, 9, 10, going to places like India and Australia was actually a bit of a first for some of the coaching staff. We raced up the world rankings between 2005 and 2011. There's a good story about when the London Olympics was announced, Jason Lee was sat in the England office. England were ranked 11 in the world at the time. He just put his head in his hands and realised, he said something I can't repeat on a podcast, but put his head in his hands and went, oh my word, this is a monumental task. And then 5th in the World Cup in 2006, 4th in the World Cup in 2010, and all of a sudden you get invites to tournaments all around the world. But I know, so 2010, we basically went to India, ate the food in the restaurant. The hygiene stuff was there, but it wasn't anywhere near what it's become. Because George, what was it like in 2018 out in Bhubaneswar?
We had our own chef, which was huge, like for a number of reasons. But yeah, we were out there for so long. Having your own chef made a big difference. We took over venue and were able to eat there. But that tournament, because it's so hot in India, you tend to know the games are later. So as Dan said, we'd make sure we properly acclimatise, and we'd make sure we really got used to the time zone. But it can vary from tournament to tournament. So like there in India, you need to be playing later in the day. Sometimes home events, because of TV, you'd always be the last game, 8 o'clock. So therefore you'd maybe not wake up till like 10:30. So it's less adapting to the country's time zone. In England, it can be adapting to the schedule. If you go the other side of the world, so like to India, you do adapt to the time zone, but then the game schedule has a big impact, because obviously you could be playing 12 o'clock lunchtime and then 8 o'clock in the evening. So there's no like benefit really on staying on home time for any of these things.
How much of a comfort, going back to the chef, was it sort of having those preparations in India for 2018, given that you've been up there for World League semi-finals or World League finals, in 2017, and it had been a slightly chastening experience?
Well, obviously didn't go to 2010. Dan could probably talk about that a bit more, what it was like then. But my experiences in the previous cycle, 2013, we stayed in Delhi. Great experience. Won a bronze medal in the World League finals. Great food in the hotel. No one got ill. This India's fantastic. Man of the Match awards handed out. People, living or experiencing a different level of attention. In terms of that type of stuff, and it was brilliant fun. The other trips to Bhubaneswar went fine, and then obviously 2017 England's huge. So that chef made a massive difference for morale. For as a team, we had like a pool table and stuff, and we could do all this fun stuff. And it was really, really good, really, really enjoyable, and it made sure we kept everyone fit, healthy, and well fed. I think it was a bit different back in 2010, was it, Dan?
Yeah, as I say, it was like a first experience for us. So from 2010 onwards, I think we went to India at least once a year, every year after that, when I was playing, or somewhere similar overseas. So, similar distance, so Malaysia, Australia, wherever. And if you go away that far and get ill and miss 4 days of training, let alone 4 days of tournament play, it's a real disaster for the team, for the group. So it just became a bigger and bigger thing. In 2010, pretty much everybody had a day or maybe two where they weren't 100% because of, stomach bugs or just general kind of illnesses that go around a large group of people, especially if you bring them together from all around the world. So yeah, all of the support even from a doctor coming in and telling us about how best to adapt to a new time zone, how to adjust your sleep, stuff like that, sort of diet you need and supplementation to make sure that your body adapts.
I think sport's always been great in doing what it can. It's just the resources improved and the knowledge base has improved. So like 2018, we were so prepared for that World Cup. And I think that's why we, did as well as we did get into the semi-finals. You do hear tales, and like, don't get me wrong, it's not just India, Asia countries where you struggle with food and illness. Illness occurs all around the world. Like if you're all in one hotel, as we talked about, illness spreads. And you can go to Europe and the food can be plain and bland. But we did have more issues over there. And I think now staff listen to players more. And that chef was huge. Like I remember the guys telling me years ago on a trip, they'd really struggle with the food because of just cultural differences, like lots of bones in it and stuff like that. People were losing weight all trip. This is like going back to around 2010. And John Hurst, bless him, who loves all weird and wonderful food, ex-goalkeeping coach for years, ex-player, he's eating like noodles for breakfast. He's eating the shrimp. He's eating everything under the sun. And he goes up to the chef one morning and a couple of lads hear him go, can you just pass on my compliments? This was like to one of the sous chefs. Can you just pass on my compliments to the chef? The food has been superb. And you've got like 4 guys behind him who haven't eaten anything for about 4 days. They've been drastically ill. It's like, the food's been superb, John. Like, it's been like type of thing. Whereas now, staff know what players need. We've got great nutritionists and stuff like that. And yeah, it really has moved on a world.
Well, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to keep this going, Zoom has got a countdown going and we haven't got very long left on this meeting. So I think that this is a good place to wrap up these 2 podcasts. I hope we've managed to bring a little bit of a smile to everyone's faces listening to this. I know I've certainly enjoyed listening to these 2 episodes, and thank you very much to George and Dan for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Will. And everybody, Will said that if this gets to like, I don't know, 100 likes, is it, Will, that you're going to play one of those guitars in the background? Is that what you said?
People don't want to see me on our channels, so...
I think it was 100 likes or like 20 to 25 retweets. Can't remember the exact amount, but yeah.
I'll regale you with a song before your next game. A huge thanks once again to Dan and George for joining us for this 2-part special of Inside the Circle, the podcast. We will be back in a fortnight's time, so in the meantime, make sure you subscribe to us on all of your usual podcast providers, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, to listen to all of our previous episodes and be the first to know when the next episode is released.